All right, so thank you everybody for joining us for this year's Regenerative Planet Summit. We have Mark Hewitt with Nugent Development talking about Microcity financing. Mark, thank you for joining us. You have the floor.
Okay, well, thank you again. So as I was trying to explain, the characteristics that we look for when investing in a project are basically a pillar of three major components. The first of which has to be, is there what we call an economic center? Is there a financial and economic reason that we would make this kind of investment, and will it produce more than it consumes? And economic centers in regenerative economic models, of which I think I've shared many papers with you guys, isn't necessarily just one thing. Usually there's a primary purpose, but we look for diversity in that framework. The second, and equally as important, are the political and regulatory environments. As an example, I just got done explaining that we are pulling multiple billions of dollars out of projects that were of equal size to Babcock Ranch in Florida, because the current state governor is going to war with Disney World, of which was built on top of the same framework that I used to build Babcock Ranch, something called an independent service district. And one of the things we find is that if we don't have strong, clear, open regulatory and political support, we don't want to push a rope uphill. So, and there's too many good places to go build microcities. The third, and again, equally as important, is, does the project and the project leader have skin in the game? What is their financial commitment into this thing, while we produce the financing that actually builds it in a very healthy economic model? We have found that these projects tend not to work if we are the only ones coming in writing the checkbook. Everybody almost immediately turns to, oh, I'm an employee, and you lose the momentum and energy of innovation and creativity and production that actually leads to successful projects. So those are the three pillars that we look at when primarily making decisions about where we partner and help manage and produce projects. One of the questions I often get about microcities is, what are they, and what makes a microcity different from, as an example, just a smart city? And since I happen to think I have it queued up here, I'm doing another project we call Cinema City. I have a presentation that we just polished up for them. I'm going to share it with you just so that you can all see it. Give me a second. I think I can share my screen, right? Okay, is this, everybody see the presentation?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, this is me, basically leveraging on the Babcock Ranch project I did, started back in 2006. The project took a direct hit from a Category 4 Hurricane Ian on the west coast of Florida. And this solar farm, along with the battery plant that comes with it, provided power throughout the storm. The lights never so much as flickered, which was kind of a cool testament to the methodology, the Babcock Ranch. Now, one of the interesting things I'll share with you. I at one point in my, Alaskan life, was a city councilman in Fairbanks. I also became the chairman of the municipal utility board. And I remember one of the projects that I helped develop and left, I hope, as a somewhat of a legacy, was I used some of the massive amounts of capital we had coming in from the oil revenues shared with our various city governments to build a utility complex and switch over our steam utility to a hot water district heat and lay pipe and conduit for other future utilities, which eventually came along when cable became fiber and things along those lines. Fairbanks actually had a really strong wealth of the economic impact on the Fairbanks community after that utility complex started to become active and impacting the cost of heating and other things within the community. And it was a very good array of data, which also helped when we were modeling the Babcock grants, and we could see the economic impact of vertically integrating all of the utility infrastructure under one single design roof, basically a form of vertical integration for utilities and infrastructure. And the original vision for the Babcock Ranch was that vision I brought forward of having a common, uniform, and engineered utility and critical infrastructure design that would then support a much more economical framework for multi-use industry, housing, commercial, and those kind of things. Well, our project was principally being funded by a pension fund called the Evergreen Fund. The developer was a golf course developer called Kitson and Partners, and Morgan Stanley was the investment bank. So Morgan Stanley said, okay, we like what you're saying, et cetera, but we don't believe people will actually buy it. So I said, I'll tell you what, I'll give you a list of high level, top 100, 100 company names. You make the arrangements to bring in, the CEOs or whoever's appropriate to make decisions of these companies. I'll do a presentation of what this kind of vertical integrated design means to their various industries. And so they said, okay, if you can get 3 letters of intent out of 10 appointments we're going to set up, then we'll back it 100%. So this was a 2-week schedule that they had me scheduled up in New York, and they brought each of the major companies to the table. General Motors was one of them. Xerox was another. Genesis, just to name a few. I walked away after 10 presentations with 10 not only signed letters of intent, but companies like IBM and General Motors actually started committing design engineering and other aspects of helping us do planning, because they thought the vision was so significantly would change their individual business models. Which was, I think, a pretty good result. Now, 2008 comes along, and the economic bust of the Republicans losing the White House, they took it out on our economy and threw us for the gauntlet. So the economy went to bust, and unfortunately, the developer chose to mothball the project until the economy popped back up again. Now, I didn't go back in and finish helping them get it up and running. They just kept with the original plans, but they turned it into a more conventional build houses, sell lots kind of development, which lost the interest of all of our industrial partners, which had originally proposed to come build, their facilities in the industrial section of Babcock Ranch. But the model still worked. And I eventually was successful in getting a large group of funding partners that frankly have more money than God. It's amazing how much money these people have. And they bought the model. So today, I now use the original, the model of vertical integration to find appropriate development partners and locations that, oh, by the way, this is a video of the Babcock Ranch as built to now. This is up and operational. There's, I think, around 15 to 18,000 residents already. If you ever have a chance to come to Florida, these are some of my original designs. Very solar. You know, it was kind of pretty. You know, brought some architects together to help do design planning. One of the things we tend to do is with a developer, we use something called design authority, which is a way of keeping all of the pieces. And it's sort of like the conductor of an orchestra, to keep all of the various segments all, you know, listening to the same metronome and following on the same beat. This, by the way, is a picture of a model that a dear friend of mine who we lost a couple of years back, just before the pandemic. He lived to 101 years old, Jacques Forrestal, and his vision of the Venus Project, which this was a man who was decades ahead of the rest of the world in terms of his thinking. I principally, this is how I live my life. It's like, I don't try to solve the problems we've got today doing the same old thing. I always look for a different perspective. You know, I'm in good company here. A microcity is a vertically integrated city. It takes all of the components that make up a community, not just the utility infrastructure, but the environment it's in, the surrounding economics. The buildings themselves are integrated into the design criteria. So, you know, to give you a rough idea, it's sort of how we think. Thanks, you know what I'm talking about when we talk about utilities. Putting everything together so that it's serviceable. We don't have to dig roads up again. It allows room for future expansion. These are just the kind of things that make sense. Back in 2006, when I started this, working with the MIT design group, they had already started developing this system of autonomous buses and other kinds of design thinking in terms of transportation. So we incorporated this into the design of Babcock Ranch, which, by the way, they did in fact build, which I thought was kind of cool. When we go to a project, as I said, we have three major legs to the table, basically: regulatory, financial, you know, there's our economic centers, and valid stakeholders. Sorry. You know, again, you guys can have a copy of this when I'm done if you'd like. We do a feasibility analysis first before we get engaged, which we call a co-creation. We bring all the stakeholders, not just the developer. We bring the community, parties who have a stake in the success of a development like this. We bring them together. We do a co-creation environment. We engage all the stakeholders. We get just everybody to throw out their ideas. We write descriptions, and we put together structuring options. You know, then we do a report. And from that point forward, once we're ready to go with the next step, we start with what we call a phase 2, which is the actual acquisition of land and the design process. This presentation was written for something called Cinema City. So I was explaining that the way that we film the days of building big studios. We use these things called walls. They're LED walls that allow the background and the environment to all be shot inside a very small stage studio. So the idea of building studios for Warner Brothers and Disney and Netflix, et cetera, has all completely changed. Then after we're done with phase 2, we do this whole thing, build, operate, transfer the structural of the project itself, which of course is designed in a multi-generational way. This actually is my mind map. I've shared this with many, including, believe it or not, did a presentation to the previous vice president, who the one page that he took out of my presentation was this one. And we got engaged heavily with the Pentagon on how to use this microcity model and approach to do builds for refugee camps and things along those lines. We use a design control process called Six Sigma. This comes out from my days with Motorola. It's a iterative approach that allows us to continuously improve, upgrade, and grow our design criteria. We use a digital ecosystem, which ties all the components and pieces together so that it is truly vertically integrated. Anyway, that's just kind of a high-level snapshot that I hope gives you guys some ideas of what we look at with projects. Questions?
Well, Mark, thank you. That was an excellent presentation. Definitely be able to share some of that. So I'll do a round robin here of questions. I obviously have plenty of my own here. So let's start with the ladies. Debbie, do you have any questions for Mark, comments you'd like to add?
Hi. Yes. Well, I was actually wondering if there were some of the people who worked on Babcock Ranch and with the vertical integration, and there was something else. I'll probably have to go back and look over it. And if they're looking for a project that can help us with their ocean platform for carbon removal and eventually Microcity. And I appreciate your descriptions of the Microcity because it's all obviously going to be built in too. So, well,
Debbie, we currently work with some of the largest contractors on the planet. We have under contract AECOM and Jacobs as two of the largest primary contractors. We have a number of other small ones. We have a company that does nothing but we call owner's rep. They are the consolidator of all the BIM and digital twinning. So we consolidate all of our contractual design criteria, and this company does nothing but keeps everything aligned so that all the parties involved in construction development later in terms of operations, and then of course there is a post-operate model that stays with the project. So we have everything that's necessary. When we have a project developer that is qualified, we usually like to work with any kind of local resources that are possible when we move this thing forward. So our capabilities become a bit of a smorgasbord, a menu that you can come in, pick and choose from. I'm finding in general, though, for most of these projects, that we use the very large contractors because they've got size and momentum, and they can push through a lot of the heavy lifting that's necessary. But we tend to, like in our architectural design side to try to pick mid-size architectural firms that are more conducive to work with the principles of design, design collaboration. Sort of the design management is a lot like a product manager in, let's say, a company like Apple. So Apple would have a product manager for each of its major products. In the case of a vertically integrated city, you have to have a single primary design authority in place so that all of the contractors, the attorneys, the security, the logistics, infrastructure all have a common place to come, meet at town hall and agree to how the wires are going to be moved and the roads are going to work together, and have everybody have insight and open ideas to solve a lot of these problems. We had a good example happen in one of the projects where a mechanical engineering company was designing the big air handlers and fans and everything like this. And the architect had left room for all this mechanical stuff to go in, but the maintenance people that were going through and evaluating the designs asked a serious question at one of our roundtables. Well, when we have to replace the fan unit, how do we get it out of there? And of course, everybody all of a sudden just realized that they actually ended up installing this huge air handling system, but then they closed the walls in around it. They had no way to actually later on repair or replace it should it need upkeep. And of course, anything mechanical is going to need repair or maintenance. So
Yes.
it led to saving literally millions of dollars by finding these kind of call it cross sections before they actually happen. And now we do something called digital twinning, which is way beyond just conventional BIM modeling, where we're actually creating effectively a fully simulated model of the entire development, including solar, wind, weather, topography, a variety, all the things that go into to make up a community. Now, I did an early version of that using BIM modeling when we did Babcock Ranch, which led to placement of buildings so that when a hurricane did come through, that the buildings weren't placed in such a fashion that they created wind tunnels. So the placement and the angles of the buildings actually on the ranch, which were all very circular, allowed the wind to move through the community without destroying anything. But it was because we were able to model that in advance, just to give
Right.
you an example.
And that was the one that really triggered in my mind, whether there was an individual or a few individuals who are responsible for making sure that the solar panels didn't
Debbie,
fly away.
one of the things that keeps me
Right.
busy aside from doing all these things is I operate tentatively as the initial design authority until I get another party up and running and trained.
Yeah.
For each
And
project.
yes, and those that and I agree with your saying about the orchestration, because the other thing too is, as we're working in a carbon reduction environment, I mean, yeah, we could contract somebody to go out and they build the first platform out of the usual materials, or the project here in California, the restoration of the water park. Yeah, the standard strategy would be come in, bulldoze the thing, and then throw the, all the roof there away and start it from scratch and add to the carbon footprint too. So we've been looking at those things, but I was really looking at this level for more like individuals versus major companies. But I appreciate knowing that you're a resource we can come to, whether you fund the project or if we get it somewhere else to help us with that. So, and
Okay,
good. All that in my mind.
Okay.
Thanks.
thank you,
Dave.
Dave.
Appreciate it.
Current, do you have any questions? Where are you at in the world today?
Oh yeah. Hi. Yeah, this has been really fascinating. I'd like to skip ahead to other people. I haven't really formulated a great question yet. And I'm eager to hear more. Everything that you're saying is fascinating. So yeah, I'd like to concede for now. Maybe come back to me.
All right. Carrie, would you like to add anything? Do you have any questions?
Mark, what software are you talking about specifically when you talk about digital twinning?
So the evolution of digital twinning, forming a digital twin, came from the original CAD/CAM, which grew into something called building information modeling, where you're able to model a project multi-dimensionally. I mean, I think we do what we call 6 dimensions in terms of project timelines, project scheduling, obviously the 3D of building infrastructure, maintenance, and other factors. So digital twinning takes us to the next step, where we actually take all of the design criteria and it really comes out like a Hollywood movie, literally, except for we take the data points, et cetera. We plug some artificial intelligence in, and we plug into, as an example, the advanced simulation labs, like up in Tallahassee, or not Tallahassee, what's the big digital simulation lab up in Tennessee? Huntsville, I think. Anyway, and so we take our models and shoot up, and these guys do advanced modeling based on their huge data structures of weather, solar, material structure, safety and security. I mean, the checklist is got, thousands of critical components into it. Earthquakes, solar radiation. It's amazing all the stuff they do. And then they come back with weaknesses, reports, suggested changes, and things along those lines, which we then go back to the appropriate engineering and architectural folks and give them the faults along with the suggested changes. And they incrementally come back with either accepting those suggested changes or making their own. And we run it again until we get something everybody's happy with.
That's wonderful. Most of the software that I'm heard about, familiar with, has been either a subscription or a specific product. Is there such a animal, or are you?
So the guy that actually
utilizing
was the founder of digital twinning is a guy named Michael Jansen. Michael Jansen, back in 1997 or 8, actually started a company called City Zenith, which actually they started with GIS information systems and BIM systems, and eventually evolved into what we know as digital twinning today. His company, as of about 3 weeks ago, is in the process of being acquired by a much larger company that has 3-letter initials and is well known in the computer sector. And there are several other big companies like Microsoft and others that have got digital twin software out there. Michael is with our team, so he stays with us.
Good.
And our current systems have got probably 20 or 30 major connectors already in place. So you can pretty much come up with whatever your CAD/CAM or your BIM or your other components, and we've got connectors already built, so we can import engineering or architectural work and then model it from that point. We actually have a whole team of Hollywood folks that are, experienced in doing Hollywood skinning and the kind of things that you see in movies today. They're actually practical people to have on the team.
Yeah, animation would be great. I've used renderings, professional renderings a lot. You were in Fairbanks many years ago, so I'm going to ask you about an individual. You may know him, CB Bettisworth. Started his
yeah.
company, Bettisworth North, 45 years ago.
Yeah.
And him and I
Yeah,
are
we know each other well.
talking good, because we're talking, and I'm extremely interested to bring him on board, and he is excited about it. And I'm in Minnesota right now, so I won't be back for another week and a half, but I want to be meeting, he wants to meet with me again and discuss some possibilities. But I wanted to know if you knew him and are familiar. He
Yeah,
almost exclusively
course.
worked in the downtown developer, as a developer.
Yeah,
He wouldn't even take work outside of town.
yeah, I know him well.
Good.
He knows me.
I'll pass on your regards.
Families
then.
go together well.
I'll pass on the regards then.
Thank you.
All right, Carrie, do you have any other questions?
No, Mark, thank you.
Okay, so
Okay.
I have a few questions. We have about a half an hour left in our hour. I appreciate you giving us the time. I know it's late on the East Coast. So
Yes, and my morning starts very early because I'm working in the Middle East too, so.
okay, I appreciate it very much. So as you know, we've been working on getting the letters you spoke of as far as getting a project moving forward, and it's very likely that those first two letters are going to come through next week. Can you give us an idea of what you see going forward, getting the responses that you want, where you see the next steps? You laid out some of the mind mapping and community gathering. Is that what you see kind of happening next with Fairbanks?
So the part of the reason to go after kind of letters of interest or support have to do with our one of the like go no go sectors in terms of our decision matrix, which is the political regulatory environment. You know, it doesn't make sense for us to come in just to know that, you know, the city is looking for another way to get more taxes. And you'd be surprised. When we were building Babcock Ranch, believe it or not, the ranch was so large it actually spanned two separate counties, and the two counties were fighting with each other as to who's going to get taxes first out of Babcock Ranch. It was sad. It was just sad. So yeah, we're concerned about the political and regulatory environment. That's the reason for trying to make sure that you've got good support for this kind of thing.
Okay. And is that what, if another community was interested, that'd be a similar goal
Yeah.
that they would first meet to, you know, we've got all the information, and so they would have to meet those first barriers moving forward. So now Alaska is a small community. The $500 million project that we're talking about for the North Star Economic Development District is twice the size of the 2023 borough budget. And some people are wondering, you know, the buildings around here cost in the millions. So what benefit would we have? What opportunities could come about by making these kind of investments?
That goes to one of the other, you know, pillars, which is what is the economic center? Why are we building this? What is the outcome going to be? And what's the economic performance of the development or the infrastructure? In this particular case, Fairbanks has always been a logistics hub of the resources that Alaska has massive resources. So when, you know, somebody's working on a future gas line, or there are things going on in terms of mining or other kinds of development, Fairbanks has always been kind of a hub of the various spokes that lead out from there. So it is reasonable to assess that the growing demand for natural resources that the rest of the world needs, that Alaska has got a lot available. also stands to reason that we should be able to not only build out infrastructure, but build out value add to those resources. Why, as an example, should we send gold out to Canada to be refined? Why can't we put refineries in close to the harvesting of gold, or molybdenum as an example, or other minerals that might be mined up in Alaska? And so that's part of what we're thinking is, you start with a business information hub, you expand residential capacity, medical capacity, and then from there you lop onto attracting industrial and other kinds of partners that will bring in the ability to provide value add to take our Alaskan resources to the next step. And I remember back when we did have the refinery up in North Pole. I think that's gone now, right? The
I don't
refinery.
think, Carrie, I don't
Yeah,
think
the
they're.
refinery's gone. Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah, it's gone. But back
there was
in the
only
beginning,
two in Alaska. One in
days of
Valdez
of
and
the
one in-
pipeline, that refinery was able to get a lower tariff rate by tapping the pipeline, and the Fairbanks Airport then became a major refueling site for the polar traffic.
Lufthansa
Polar-
was coming in. Lufthansa was
Pardon?
coming in.
Oh, yeah,
Lufthansa.
yeah, we had 4 747s landing on the airport out there. It was amazing to go out there and count 20, 30, 40 747s sometimes, especially when some of them got grounded for some reason or not.
And that refinery provided jet fuel for Eielson.
It did, Eielson, and for Greeley too. They
Yeah.
put all those for Greeley.
So to circle back around to the original question about why should Fairbanks, North Starborough, why should Alaska consider looking at investments this large? You're saying that it's because it gives us the opportunity to invest in infrastructure and capacity building around manufacturing, things that we just don't have here.
Industry.
It allows us to address our high cost of energy because we're no longer switching out bulbs, we're switching out the grid. We're upgrading it to what standards we have and creating the capacity for manufacturing, which you indicated we have a lot of opportunities for. We also were looking at advancing other industries. We know that carbon and that's part of Alaska, but we recognize that these kind of investments also open up opportunities like in healthcare, aerospace. Healthcare is supposed to be by 2030 a $6 trillion industry, aerospace a $1 trillion industry, micro manufacturing nearly 800 billion. Geotourism, which really focuses and thrives in an environment that's healthy, an ecosystem that's healthy. And then data management is nearly 300 billion. And we know that data systems like the cold. Are these the kind of things that you see that Alaska could benefit from as economic drivers in the future?
Some of them are, yes. Correct.
Okay, well, like I said, Mark, I appreciate you taking the time. It's late for you in Florida. So unless anybody has a hand they want to raise for any future questions, I think we should let this gentleman get some sleep. And I will let you know what the results are, the vote off next week. And hopefully we'll get to talk about master planning and next steps with investors after that. So is there, Mark, is there anything you'd like to add on the way out the door?
Nope, no more questions? Okay,
I don't.
well, thank you all. I appreciate the time. Nice to meet you all. And hopefully I'm back to my old hometown, at least saying hi.
Very
All right.
good.
Thanks so much.
And thank you folks very, very much for joining us. Make sure if you have the time to join us tomorrow night to watch us converse with Daryl Oster and talking about high-speed transit, which is another investment opportunity we could be looking at in the future. And then remember, Saturday night, we'll be meeting with Chris Hunter and talking about CO2 scrubbing and biofuel creation, one of his Arctic Innovation Competition enterprises. So thank you again for joining us. for this year's Regenerative Planet Summit, and stay beautiful and stay bold.